But this idea about mass action,
SCLC.
take it to the streets.
That's it.
We are one of the top-rated independent television series in the state of Alabama.
Of our movement and how and don't try to get we got my
I couldn't see. I didn't know that.
I already know you hollered at you. Bring this to me, Doc.
Their theme is remember the past, so here was the past, but we're changing that. And I'm representing the future and the present. So we got women now very much involved, and we have these men tonight because it's just for tonight's presentation. But I helped to organize all the marches, and today, you know, everybody marched with Martin Luther King. Everybody went to school with him, including women, and he went to all-male school. It's fashionable today to have been associated with the movement. We were standing in the lobby meeting with the general manager of the hotel, and a well-dressed white man walked up and said, "Are you Martin Luther King?" And he said, "Yes, I am." He hauled off and wham! Hit him upside the head. And I was so angry. And I was getting ready to do it. I don't know what I was going to do. But Martin said, "You know, you have to be nonviolent because you're so small, you can't whip anybody." And I said, "Yeah, but if I kick them in the right place, I can get their attention." When he was spat on and hit, he just said, "These incidences just remind us that we still have a lot of work to do." And I remember that so fondly of Dr. King, who never, ever once showed any sense of retaliation. We're here tonight. We're going to talk about some people with great experiences.
I used to wonder in reflection why there were not more mass uprisings. It's because we were insulated from the pain of it. Not isolated, but insulated. Between loving parents and grandparents and church and school, you kind of lived in that triangle. You see that sign that says colored see from the rear, whites from the front? These incidents of insult began to pile up on us. And so when I came home from school in 1959 and couldn't use the public library and had to cut my summer vacation, my Christmas vacation short to show how this thing operates, I said, this summer I'm going to use this library. I didn't know anything about Dr. King or Dr. Albama at that time. It was not in my consciousness. Little did I know the Reverend Vivian and Reverend Lawson and Bernard and the ABT crowd were planning to demonstrate. I'm in Greenville. They in Nashville. We didn't know each other. In Greensboro, while they were planning it, in Greensboro, they did it. So the woman has the spirit of the times. There was something pregnant in the air.
I started to deal with my fears, and I realized that I need a pistol. So I bought me a pistol and a knife. I was not nonviolent at the beginning. Later on, when the movement started, I then decided that Martin Luther King Jr. Is a prophet. and that I needed to follow him. I put down my pistol and my knife, and since then, I've been moving in the direction of nonviolence.
All right.
And I've been to jail 13 times. I have sued a city. I became the first black mayor in the city of Hopewell. I am still a member of the city council in Hopewell. And I can do all of this without being violent.
Hey, if you're not ready, you shouldn't be there. All right? You know. You know why you're there, and you know that that if it's not worth the struggle, then you shouldn't be in the struggle or be in the back room somewhere, right? The point being is, it was not a matter of me alone, it was a matter of all of those other people. Yes. But it came a lot sooner than that, right? It came 9 years before Montgomery for me, right? Is that, you see, I was up south. I wasn't down south. You get my point? Is that I was in Illinois, Pure, Illinois, the second largest city in the state, Chicago being the largest, of course, right? And we had to, a restaurant, you had to sit in a certain place. Now, it wasn't in the back room. They didn't have any signs, but it was a part of the mores, right? It was a part of the culture, right? It was their way of dealing. A group of us got together and said, no more, right? And we took a book that Jim Farmer had created in opening up Chicago. We're talking about how things move, right? Is that there were individual acts of things happening all the time. They had to be put together. Finally, one victory after the other. We opened the lunch counters in restaurants in Pure, Illinois, all right? Is that the difference is between us and Martin King. Because everybody say, well, why didn't you this, why didn't you that? Because we weren't Martin, right? When Martin started, he kept that rolling, he kept that rock going up the hill for years and years and years. And they forget that the basis of nonviolence is based upon the understandings that Jesus brought into life. I want every young person to get in particular, right? Is that if you don't love people, forget movement, all right? Come on. See, because until you care enough about people, that what happens to most people is more important to you than what happens to you particularly. You haven't made it. And until you want for everybody what you want, but once you are, right? And you can do what a Fred does and get bombed out of bed. Then you can begin to do all the things that really matter, that made the movement. Is that Martin King was the prophet of our age, right? Is the prophet of our age.
I'm a northerner, North Alabama. in Huntsville, a little place called the Shoe Shop. And I was coming out of the door. I was about 11 or 12. And I was 3/4 out the door when a big 6-foot-tall policeman shoved me in the belly with his nightstick and said, "Get back, boy. Don't you see a white man coming in the door?" And of course, I was a little fella, he was a big fella. I got back and had a little pearl handle pistol that he kept in the top drawer of the ship robe. And I wanted the pistol to equalize the size between big cop and me. But to make a long story short, when I came out of the house with the pistol, my father, I never saw my father at home in the daylight, except on Sunday. But on this day, it was still daylight, in the afternoon, school was out. My father met me at the door with the pistol and asked me what was wrong. Took the pistol, whipped my butt. I told him what happened. The next day we went down to see the chief of police to protest. And the police officer told my father there was nothing he could do about it. This was the only kind of person he could hire to be a police officer, to take it and forget about it and keep going. And when I was president of SCLC and pastoring the church at the same time, I did it for a pastor that was president for about 9 years. While I was pastoring, I was president. And people used to ask me, you know, how do you keep this balance? And it was one thing.
Yes,
there was no
that's one thing.
Departmentalization
Yes.
of my ministry.
That's it.
Working to help folks get to heaven was the same as getting help get to us. Everybody gets called because there's in you an image and a likeness of God that resists being put down. And you have to decide what to do about it.
Yes.
I'm glad that I realized the connection in church because it helped me be ready for when a Martin Luther King came along to lift the movement from its purely civic character to its moral character, and to give us moral authority to march against the evil of our day. And that's what we're waiting on right now. I've never seen our nation in greater need of the exercise of moral authority than today. I'm talking about the 10 Commandments translated into witness for truth and speaking truth and putting an end to poverty and an end to war and an end to humiliation on the basis of race and color. And God is calling us right now to witness against poverty and war in this country. And I got called a long time ago. It just took me a long time to answer. And I'm in the process of still answering.
That's right.
But most importantly, to be around people that's on this stage, and particularly Dr. Joe Lowry. I have to give Dr. Lowry credit. Dr. Lowry and Reverend John Nettles. Dr. Lowry and Reverend John Nettles took me under their wings. They took me under their wings. And they didn't know it, but I was observing them, every move they made. And Dr. Lowry used to always counsel me. You know, we get in the car and I would find out where he's going to be. Reverend Nelson, I can't make it. I said, I can go pick him up. And I'll go pick up Joe in Mississippi, wherever it may be. And the same with Martin Luther King III. We became good friends, along with John Nettles and others. But in closing, to show you the impact, because Joe Lowry used to come by my house, I'll make it a point. I said, Joe, I forgot something, Doc. I need to run by the house. I wanted my kids to see Joe Lowry. I wanted my kids to be around Joe Lowry.
I remember saying to one of the white mayors of this city is that you should have been the central city of the South. You had everything. You had money. You're the only place that had anything in the South you could work with, all right? is that, but what happened is that in Atlanta they said we're too busy to hate. All right? And, well, they were not quite too busy to hate, but they were not too busy to discriminate. But they were better off than any other places. So they grew and they became the central place of the South, right? Birmingham could have been, but it was too backward in terms of its racial attitudes. We changed that.
Most courageous of the civil rights leaders. Here in Birmingham, he was the heart and soul of the Birmingham movement. I'm convinced that without Fred Shellsworth, we would have had a movement in Birmingham, but not of the magnitude that the movement became.
I knew when I came here that segregation was wrong, and remember I had the advantage of having been a preacher for a while. I knew basic scriptures. Nobody knows all about God now but God. You know, I guess when God really wants you to do something about something, he makes it so nothing is good about it. So I didn't have any inclination, I didn't have any kindred feelings toward those who thought that segregation might have been all right. I didn't think it was all right in any way. And of course, I grew to move with a passion against everything. So my chief aim, Doctor, was to embarrass segregation and the segregationists, not to harmfully do anything. Remember when our slogan when we organized was not one hair on the head of one white person would be harmed by us in our struggle. So I committed to nonviolence right there. And of course, the Klan saw to it that if you agitate for change, I'm not too sure that Negroes at one time would not have accepted, and they've been asking for things, but the whites' position was no. In fact, I made that statement to the white man smile like he means yes when he's talking about freedom, but he means hell no. And I knew that, so it wasn't nothing for me to do, go but fall. And I got into it in registration. And I had a target. I had Mr. Connor who could assure the people that wasn't nothing going to change. And I couldn't believe his word. I could believe God's word that change is necessary.
It took a civil war and our shifting the balance of power to the Union to save the Union with ending slavery as a byproduct. And it was not the Emancipation Proclamation that set us free, it was the 13th Amendment. But that won by 2 votes. Our theology changed the law.
Theology changed the law.
Changed the law. And my argument now is that we're disconnected from a sense of Montgomery was 346 years after slavery. It wasn't just the Rosa Parks and some. That's like starting way down the line. We got to have a sense of the history of our situation and the theology of our liberation. The Urban League's fundamental mission is research and education, which is valid. NAACP, basically legal. But this idea about mass action,
SCLC.
take it to the streets.
That's it.
That is bona fide, certified SCLC.
A few years ago, we marched across the Edmund Pettus Bridge. Here we are now talking about getting rid of the Voting Rights Act. I don't believe that we are not going to take it. What's going on in our country now is not really benefited to any of us.
That's right.
Black people or white people.
That's right.
Therefore, one of these days, we're going to wake up and discover that if we are not careful, we'll be back into slavery again.
Everybody knows that we are not who we say we are. Last time we were the ones that showed it up, just like Jess said, is that and we are the ones that have got to free America.
The foolishness, the false sense of patriotism, the deceit about weapons of mass destruction, the stacking of the Supreme Court with negative, retrogressive ideologues for absolutely nothing in the Middle East. I think they're beginning to see that they've been had. And what God may be waiting on now. The Bible says faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. Something wrong with your faith base if you don't love.
And our history in this country is taught from a Western and European perspective, which excludes Native Americans, Latino Americans, Asian Americans, and African Americans, and others. And until we begin create a change the curriculum in our school system so that it is more responsive, so that young people in nursery school are taught the history of all the different ethnic groups that make up the population. It's a shame and a disgrace that in 2005 that we are going back to have to demand to put a Voting Rights Act in place. Now, we had a Voting Rights Act in the past, but of course, the Voting Rights Act never guaranteed that our votes would be counted. And that's part of what the problem was. So as it relates to a new Voting Rights Act, there's got to be something that ensures that all of the votes are counted and guaranteed. And then there's got to be a check and balance system. If you have a voting machine with no documentation, then how do you know that who you think you're voting for, you voted for? You're voting in the cyberspace. So we've also got to address that issue as a final thing that I want to say across this nation.
And my sole goal, it was never to be the chief of police. I only wanted to serve and make a difference in my community, and that continues to go on. And I want to do the best job possible. I want to be an example for those who are coming behind me. As our congressman said, what will people say 40 years from now? And I'm surrounded with Bob Boswell, who was here in the days when it was really, really tough for an African American to be a policeman in Birmingham.
I can't remember ever seeing a program like Art Visions. Art Visions is a program about human rights, and what better place for a program like this to originate from than the cradle of civil rights, which is Birmingham, Alabama. we should spread the message, and would go back and look at our history and say, look, this is Birmingham, Alabama, and this is what we struggled for: equal rights, equal justice. Art Visions is taking the lead in spreading that message throughout the state.
The uniqueness of this television series is that it's designed to respect everyone. Imitating and stealing ideas from other artists and other organizations and other television series like Art Visions does not show respect for the arts and humanity.